Welcome to the One Advantage podcast, exploring the intersections of peer power, culture, and agility. Your hosts, Mike Richardson, Jason Richmond, and Leo Potari, co-founders of the One Advantage community of practice and advantage peer groups. For more information, please visit us at the One Advantage podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the second episode of the One Advantage podcast with my co-host Jason Richmond and Leo Batari. Today, we're going to talk about the topic of intentionality, being intentional with peer power, intentional with culture, and intentional with agility, not just leaving those things to be organic, because they don't happen reactively by accident. They happen proactively by design. Before we get into all of that, though, let's say hi to Jason and Leo and find out what they've been up to. Leo, where have you been hanging out these days?
Well, I've been hanging out in the balmy 3-degree temperatures of Madison, Wisconsin this week. So that's been really great. You know, nice to be home in Southern California. So, yeah, but it was really, really terrific. I actually spoke to a fairly new Vistage group there. And it was just a really great experience. Whenever you can have in that situation, kind of the chair and the members experiencing, which will be the theme today, the kind of intentional conversations that can drive, a level of excellence for their group and in turn for their teams, their companies. Everyone starts seeing the value and the power of that. So it was just a great experience, great fun.
And you've just passed through 250 presentations to Vistage groups, correct?
That's to Vistage groups, yeah. And then if you count all the other private groups and other such, it's well over 300. So, yeah, wow. It's been a wonderful learning experience, I think, for all of us.
Hey, everybody, I have to tell you, having been a Vistage chair and a Vistage speaker myself, I spoke to 400 groups. Moving through that 250 group mark means that Leo is the man. I mean, he is the guy in demand, talking about the power of peers to peer groups that want to take their game to an all nother level. What about you, Jason? What have you been up to?
Well, right now I'm spending a little time in the U.S. Virgin Islands, as you can probably see from behind me. Wanted to get out of that Colorado cold, but I've spent most of my time in January just supporting clients, Mike.
Yeah.
A lot of people going in to 2022 with new workforces, new ways of working, hybrid workforces, working with them and being intentional in direction and next steps in implementing change, all kinds of things. And obviously we're going to be launching a new website here any week, but it's taken up a lot of time and a lot of effort, and that's pretty exciting. And continuing our curriculum development around culture and peer power and agility, so we can get those across the finish line to get them in our communities and out in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I comment on this, Jason. I mean, a recurring question I hear these days is, how the heck do I do culture when I've got half of my workforce or more working remotely? It just becomes an increasing challenge.
Yeah, it becomes an increasing challenge because it's brand new, right? Because we're coming out of a crisis, if you will. Yeah. But if you step back and look at the big picture and you're strategic about direction and plan, you can be very intentional. It's just the way we work is going to be different, and we got to get comfortable with that. I mean, Leo, you got the Vistage group talks. How much are you talking about, becoming comfortable with the way we work now? Because there's a lot of habits that have to change.
It's on everybody's mind. I mean, it's just on everybody's mind. Supply chain, increasing prices, and how do I lead my company? What does my future of work look like? Those are the three dominant conversations out there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been getting a lot of inquiries around keynote speaking in particular. And what I've been saying to people is, the biggest risk now as leaders emerge from the pandemic is that they think they were agile and that they've got insights into true agility now. And clearly they were to some degree. But, enterprise agility is a very big, complex task and challenge. And of course, the pandemic has been a wake-up call to everybody. Oh my gosh, I need to more proactively and intentionally develop our leadership agility, our organizational agility, enterprise agility than ever before. And then, of course, everybody in our brand new community, the One Advantage, we are now actively forming new Advantage peer groups, as we'll talk about in a moment, putting up new online courses and welcoming new members who are coming in to the community in quite some numbers right now, and getting the whole conversation going. So we'll tell you more about that as we go along. But let's begin to talk, Leo, about this whole topic of intentionality. I mean, first of all, what do you mean by that word? And if you like, on the flip side, what are some other words that are kind of the opposite of intentionality?
Yeah. So when I really started seeing how important intentionality was, it was right after writing The Power Appears. And I was surrounded by a bunch of chairs, as I've told you the story many times, who were saying, "What do you want to do with all this content and all that?" And we decided to come up with a self assessment for groups. And I mean that very sincerely. It's a self assessment, it's not me assessing anything, it's just facilitating intentional conversations that group members have among one another about what they expect of themselves, what their expectations of others, anyone who's new who's going to join the group. And I remember it was the sixth meeting. Literally, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a group in St. Louis. They'd been around for 17 years. Now I'm going in to speak with them about their group and how they can up their game. Now they're looking at me like, all right, really? I think we kind of got this, by now. And I'm like, all right. And I wasn't sure they weren't right. So all of a sudden now we kind of go through this, though. And it was amazing to me that once you got them into conversations that were not going to happen organically, which may be one of those little flip side words we're talking about, but truly happened because we set time aside and we took each of these topics one at a time. And I was astounded, actually, at the number of opportunities they discovered for one another about how to take their game to the next level. And it was at that point, I mean, I'd always believed it was really impactful, but to watch it happen that day with that group convinced me that this kind of conversation works for anybody. So that's been exciting. And now to have had the privilege, not only with Vistage groups, but with other peer groups around the world and with companies, with their high performing teams, to be able to just sit down and have them just talk to one another and create a level of clarity that is just really been great to see, and virtual as well as in person. So
fantastic. And Jason, what about you? I mean, when you use that word intentionality or being intentional, and words on the flip side, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I can tell you, Mike, it's really easy to identify when people are not being intentional. They live in a world of chaos. Right, chaos and drama. It's just it's constant. I mean, they've got leaders, they've got meetings, they got things going on, they got people that are unprepared. They're winging it. They live in a cycle of rapid change just for change's sake. Right. Yeah. I'm very, very familiar. One word I use for intentionality is being deliberate. Right, and I'm just like Leo. I wrote my second book, Culture Ignited. And as you know, it's all about 5 disciplines of adaptive leadership. Well, each one of those disciplines, you have to be intentional to be successful in that. So I'll just put it in context for you. And one, if you look at performance management, right? In today's world, the importance of performance management. If you're intentional about managing performance, you're really focused on all the behaviors and all the skill sets needed to actually perform, right? And it's not in a series of chaos, right? A culture or an organization that's intentional in the context of performance, they're always asking themselves, how can we even get better?
Yeah.
And with that question, I mean, they're forcing themselves to constantly debrief and look at how they're doing to make improvements. So there's really 3 things, Mike, when I talk about intentionality, especially in the context of performance management. Everyone knows what's expected of them. if you're intentional, there's nobody in the organization that doesn't know what's expected. 2, feedback is a two-way street and given on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And the third thing is goals are constantly being looked at, reviewed, and adapted or realigned when necessary. And that really links right into the agility methodology of operations.
Yeah. I love what you said about, the telltale sign of a lack of intentionality, a lack of being deliberate, a lack of clarity is chaos.
Yeah.
And I feel like you lobbed me a softball there because as you all know, I love to talk about, the difference between disorganized chaos and organized chaos. And look, in business these days, it's going to be chaotic. It's so fast moving. We're in the flow of so much disruptive change on so many levels all the time. It can't not be chaos. You're not about to get chaos to go away. But can you be in the flow of organized chaos because you've been investing proactively, deliberately, methodically, rigorously to get to that clarity of how we're going to operate, what our core values are, how we're going to leverage peer power, how we're going to operate with agility, rather than reactively, wishful thinking that somehow or other a peer-powered culture of agility is just going to emerge from the chaos. It never, ever, ever happens, in my experience at least. Mm-hmm. And you're in this flow of disorganized chaos and, if not crisis management, and that just sucks you into the weeds, which means all of your great intentions, you put aside Friday afternoon to invest intentionality in some things, and 11:59 and 59 seconds on Friday, the phone rings and torpedoes the rest of your day because you're just in a flow of disorganized chaos. Thanks for the softball, Jason.
Mike and Leo, to organizations, to our listeners, the people joining us today, we don't want to scare anybody, right? It can be dealt with, right? The efforts and what we bring to the table and working collaboratively together can help create that culture of intentionality. Yeah. There's some hurdles and some challenges to it, and there's a level of commitment, but it's not a mountain that can't be climbed.
Yeah. And Leo, what would you add into the mix here, Leo? And in particular, when you think about peer power, what does it take to become more intentional about leveraging peer power inside of organizations?
Well, first of all, it is the recognition that it's important and that it matters. What runs horizontally in your organization is what gives that vertical structure strength. We've talked a lot about, we can focus on our senior VPs, our directors and managers and all that. But when you ask CEOs, how many of you have people in your company who are really influential with other people, even though they're not at the most senior level in the organization? And of course, every hand in the room will go up. It's this recognition and understanding who are these key influencers? How do we get their input? How do we get their involvement? How do we work with them to create the kind of alignment and engagement around strategic initiatives, policy change, of all kinds going in an organization so that you can actually work together to be successful? And the more intentional everyone can be about that, and recognizing the value of getting everybody on board, not just half the people, not just a quarter of the people, not just the leadership team, but everybody, it just makes all the difference.
I love what you just said, that the verticals get strength from the horizontals. And what pops to mind, of course, is the concept of scaffolding, right? I mean, if you just put up vertical scaffolding, it's not going to stand up for very long. You need the horizontal connections. Is that what you're getting at?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So when people think of it that way, it's an easy construct, right? It's an easy thing to illustrate in your mind about what that looks like and what that means. And even something as simple as, consider oftentimes when people talk about shared purpose in an organization. In most organizations, it's somebody's purpose that everyone has to comply with. There's nothing particularly shared about it, right? So again, it's the kind of thing where if you reach into your organization and really start gaining some, understanding about what it's all about and why we're here and what we're doing. Just, and it's incredible how easy it is. I mean, Tuckman talked years ago about forming, storming, norming, performing, right? But who does the forming stage well? Most people, not at all. They're just diving in, making all kinds of assumptions about how we're working together and what we're doing. And only to find out that the deeper we get into it, the more we realize, maybe those assumptions aren't holding up after all. So.
Yeah, and the other thing that comes up for me, whether we're talking about peer power or culture or agility, or frankly, the coming together of all of those things, is we have to lean into all of this systemically, not just incrementally. Most organizations that aren't, growing like they want, or as innovative as they want, or providing the customer service, soup to nuts that they want, it's because they have a systemic problem that isn't closing the gap to that level that they want to play at. And any systemic problem requires a systemic solution. Otherwise, if you're just kind of chipping away at it, you never see the breakthrough that you're looking for. And that's what we're really talking about here, is how do you invest and lean in with intentionality to address the whole system of peer power and culture and agility. What else would you add in the mix, Jason?
Well, I think intentionality really drives opportunity. I mean, opportunity for growth and change. Most of us dislike change, right? And we're just coming out of a crisis, right? This pandemic. It's sometimes the best time to implement overdue change. I mean, you take a look at some of the industries that have been very, very intentional. Take a look at manufacturing. How many manufacturing companies shifted gears and started manufacturing brand new products?
Yeah.
Like, take a look at healthcare. Think about the advancements we've had in virtual medicine now. Right? You didn't do that by accident. Education, the transference to remote learning, not only in our business structure, but in our school systems. And then I think of business being intentional about creating hybrid workforces. So I really think intentionality in our world today is driving opportunity.
Yeah. Hey, let's touch a little bit on some of the exciting things we've got coming up. Jason, you're going to be releasing a brand new on-demand online course inside the community in March, correct? That you shot in last Q4 last year.
Yeah, absolutely. In November, we are days away from launching a couple different programs in the marketplace about how to create the foundation of culture that you're trying to build, how to be intentional in evolving your culture. But then we're launching an entire 9-module curriculum that walks you through the whole model, the whole culture evolution model, from being strategic and intentional to defining, implementing, and all the way to sustaining that culture going forward. It's been a labor of love, but it's I can't wait. Any day now, it'll be out in the marketplace and launched, and that's exciting stuff.
So it'll be everybody. It'll be progressively released during February and fully released in March. It'll be in numerous places, not least of all inside the community. I can't wait to see it, Jason. I mean, I was one of the lucky ones to be, on the other side of the camera, showing up here and there. I just can't wait to see the final finished produced product.
Mike, what I'm excited about it and why it's different than most programs out there is this involves simulations. This involves client engagements. This involves real life scenarios coming from clients' perspectives. This is embedded in the online curriculum as panel discussions, real problem solving discussions, and thought leadership as some of the extras that are coming out of this curriculum. So really excited because it's really different than most online programs that you participate in.
Yeah. So everybody, if you want to be intentional, that's what we're talking about here. If you want to be intentional with culture, watch out for that. Come on inside the community, check it out. It's going to be coming out progressively in February and certainly fully released by March. And Leo, you're going to be launching in February, starting with some live events, correct? You're going to be launching your own course inside the community as well.
Yeah, we are. We'll talk about peer-powered culture of agility. We'll talk about peer innovation, which, as you know, is this idea of peer, a person like me, and innovation, creativity realized, kind of put together. And we're going to really start at the beginning, and that is actually looking at the very basic idea of having the courage to ask for help and to
Yeah.
see asking for help not as
Mhm.
some kind of sign of weakness, but a real act of resourcefulness. And moving forward to building that culture where people truly help one another, they're willing to give it, they're willing to receive it, recognizing that what they can do together is far more than what anyone uh, can do individually, and just kind of moving forward with a whole program that talks about how to intentionally build that kind of culture to truly get your team working together in a way that will bring you to brand new heights.
Yeah, that's so exciting, everybody. I
Yeah.
think Leo's really onto something with not just the power of peers, not just peer advantage, but this whole concept of peer innovation, peer power fueling innovation. And so his course will be coming out in the community progressively with some live events, and then in a recorded format thereafter on demand during February. And then in April as well. So we've got a lot coming, everybody, in February, March, April. In April, we'll be doing the same thing with an agility on-demand class and course in the community, starting out with live events and then going into an on-demand format. Everything you want to know about enterprise agility, organizational agility, leadership agility, and how to show up as an agile leadership presence, not a fragile leadership presence. So come on into the community, everybody, and check all that exciting stuff out that we've got moving here. And let's go back to where we were, guys. I mean, we all work with all kinds of clients and customers and consumers. When you see organizations who are being intentional, what kinds of things do you see them doing? And when you see organizations that aren't being intentional, what kinds of things do you see them doing? Leo, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I'll start with those who aren't being intentional. And oftentimes, what they do is they just continue to avoid having the necessary conversations, and they're willing, unfortunately, to keep fueling the assumptions that they make about others, and how toxic that can be, not only to working relationships, but certainly to productivity. And it's fascinating that when you get people who will come together and have real conversations on a regular basis, where they find out, oh, maybe that assumption I was making about why something didn't happen was so completely wrong, and now I understand it better, and now there's a better feeling there, or I'm understanding that there are opportunities for me to get help in certain areas that I didn't even realize existed. So the more that we are open, that we have those conversations, the more we can discover one another, and I think really discover opportunities that you just it's amazing, right? We're being intentional about it, but then at the same time,
Yeah.
through that intention becomes all of these accidental learnings in many respects. So
Yeah.
it's a really it's a great thing, and when you see companies do that well, it shows.
I love what you said about discover. It's all a discovery, really, isn't it? Discovering, you said, one another, which I think is really powerful. Discovering opportunities, discovering threats, and not just discovering symptoms of problems, but getting to the root cause of problems, if not getting beneath that to kind of the recurring pattern of the kind of problems that we experience as an organization, and how can we address the pattern to systemically change the pattern to something more beneficial. So discovery, Leo, is for that clarity and that intentionality seems to be the process of sort of going mining for those opportunities, correct?
Yeah.
And people become more open in that process, because the other thing that we come across is that most of the time people only find what they're looking for. So,
Right.
right? So if I'm looking for black
Found
rocks
it.
on the beach, it's all I'm seeing, right? But if I start being open to the fact that maybe there's some diamonds around those black rocks, I'm like, whoa, wait a second. There's an aspect of that, and we can help each other be open in that regard. But that comes through intentional conversation and open dialogue and psychological safety and a whole host of other things that I know we're going to be talking about in the course of other shows.
I think what Leo is saying, everybody, everybody, stop playing hide and seek in your organizations. Let's just all come out from the shadows and start talking properly. Jason, what do you see or not see when you're looking for intentionality in organizations?
Again, we're all agreeing and kind of saying the same thing here. So let me give you an example, Mike. I just finished facilitating a 2-day leadership offsite for a division in a client of ours. I've been a client of ours for over 10 years. And the reason for this, of course, we're in January, so we got to have some strategic planning and some integration, but it was all new leadership. And that leader came in from the outside, and instead of making those assumptions or just coming into the group and saying, this is what our strategy is, this is how we're going to operate, he really stood back, planned this 2-day event to bring his teams together to work on this strategy. I mean, you talk about being intentional about vulnerability and getting to know the players you have in place. So their big focus, guys, was they've got a very seasoned workforce. They have been doing some of the same things the same way for years.
Yeah.
Right. So this whole culture of new ideas and innovation and collaboration was what this new leader is bringing to the table. But if he just wanted to come in and say, this is the way it is, it wouldn't have worked. It would have failed. Yeah. But taking those 2 days and being intentional about creating that buy-in and alignment with this new team and this new leader, it was fascinating. It was fantastic.
And isn't that a great example where really, comment on this, guys, really intentionality or the absence of intentionality really starts at the top, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, yes, it's got to be a bottom-up facilitated process, as you said, because you need that enrollment, that engagement, that buy-in. You need people to feel heard and that the ideas are coming up from them. They're the people that live at the coalface. But the impetus for that to set that snowball in motion of facilitating that bottom-up process has to start top down, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that leader has to have, Leo, you touched upon it, vulnerability. Right. In order to be intentional with your team and your people, there's times where you have to open up and be a little vulnerable for that.
Right. Because otherwise it just becomes the leader saying, well, that's okay for you. It's not I don't have to do it. Modeling those behaviors becomes huge, obviously.
Yeah,
and it's a thing I was posted a thing the other day where I talked about the importance of a leader being a part of the team, not apart from it. And the difference between creating a healthy culture of accountability versus having a blame culture, is so important. But these things don't happen by accident. And I think to your point, the leader has to set the tone. You've got to be intentional about exactly what it is you're trying to create, but recognize that you've got to bring people along in that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, in our own way, what we all do, everybody, is we hold up a mirror to CEOs and executives and managers, and we say to them, look, you are simultaneously the solution and the problem. If you don't have the intentionality that you need in your organization and you're stuck in disorganized chaos as a sort of vicious cycle and spiral, then just look in the mirror. Yeah. If you are experiencing that intentionality and a virtuous cycle and spiral, look in the mirror. You are simultaneously the solution and the problem. Yeah. And intentionality is the key. Jason, what other words of wisdom would you like to share as we start to sign out here?
Well, I would say intentionality is not something that's nice to have, right? I think I know. In order for organizations, in order for leaders to be successful, in order for leaders to have successful teams, right, they've got to be very intentional in their leadership styles and their behaviors, very deliberate, very intentional, very focused to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And everybody, that doesn't mean that, somehow or other in the craziness of the flow that you're experiencing right now, you've got to somehow try to find the opportunity to have a 3-day retreat sometime in the next 3 months, which is an impossibility. It doesn't have to start with that. It can start with an hour
That's
It
right.
could start with 15 minutes. It could start with a 2-minute conversation with somebody, your HR partner or your COO. Say, you know what? We need to get this snowball rolling because we need to roll our game up to a higher place and get off this lower place that we tend to play at.
Mhm.
Leo, what else would you throw on the fire here?
Just as a final word, I think that we all do it. We all make assumptions. And I think if we can make fewer assumptions and ask more questions and engage more people in conversation where we give ourselves and everyone around us the benefit of the doubt, we can do some pretty extraordinary things.
Yeah, awesome. Jason, what else before we sign off here?
I would just say thank you for you guys. I mean, the inspiration that we create in this group, and for our audience. I mean, we're very intentional in the resources, the thought leadership, the value we're bringing to everybody every day. I love throwing down a challenge, Mike, and it's one of my core things in my own leadership style. Right, I really believe in challenges, and I believe my challenge to everyone that's listening to this podcast is pick one thing. Pick one thing that you want to improve on, or one person on your team that you feel needs to be coached, and become more intentional with that and start the habit of becoming intentional.
Yeah, and just get the snowball rolling from there, everybody. It's every journey starts with the first step, and start small and finish big. Just get started. So everybody, we've been talking about intentionality today. How do you be more intentional with a peer-powered culture of agility? Don't leave it to be reactive by accident. It's not going to happen. Make sure that you're leaning into it deliberately, intentionally, with clarity, to have that peer-powered culture of agility that you really deserve and you really need, and just get that snowball rolling. We'll put some links in the show notes below, but you know where you can find us, www.theoneadvantage.com. Come on over to the community, join us, look out for those exciting things coming down the path, those online courses that we mentioned in February, March, and April. www.theoneadvantage.com. Jason, Leo, thanks so much. Safe travels, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, my friends.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the One Advantage podcast. If you liked this episode, please consider helping us by rating us wherever you listen, spreading the word, having us as a guest on your podcast or webinar, and mentioning us in social media. Find us at the One Advantage podcast, where you can get more information about us and this episode. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to more great episodes to come.